Hi, I'm Arlen Geyer. This is a brief clarification on the use of a few of the tools in Adobe Lightroom. So I have an image here that I want to make some adjustments on, and the specific tools I want to look at are the Adjustment Brush, the Radial Filter, and the Graduated Filter. So with each of these, you can click on this Adjustment Brush, and now I can adjust the size of it. If I scroll down here a little bit, I can adjust the size and the amount of feather and all of that. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. That's the feather. I want to make the size bigger. Here it is. Make the size just a little bit bigger. There we go, and the feather is just fine. So I want to just darken this area right in here, but I'm going to paint in that area. You can see, don't really see anything happening. If I want to see where I'm painting, I can click this Show Selected Mask Overlay down at the bottom here. The keyboard shortcut for that is O, as in overlay. So if I click that, you can see in red now the area that I have painted into. And so there. Now if we look at history, I'm going to open up my history panel. You can see that I've added 2 brush strokes. If I click and do this again, you can see now I've added a 3rd brush stroke. Click in there and add that. I've added a 4th brush stroke. And I'm now going to turn off the overlay. And I'm now going to exit this. I can do that by either clicking on the adjustment brush again or clicking on Done down here below the image. And so now I have finished. And you can see I have 4 brush strokes there. Now if I go to the before and after view, we can compare, and the two look exactly the same. The reason for that is that although I applied 4 brush strokes, I didn't do anything with them. So if I go back into the adjustment brush and I find the button that indicates where that was, and if I click on that button, I can now do something with those that set of adjustments, which right now you notice that here it shows that everything is neutral. It hasn't done anything. So I'm going to just darken the exposure in that area by dragging the exposure to the left some. And I want to take it about there. And I want to avoid, see that blue there means that I'm clipping the dark areas, because up here in the histogram I have my clipping indicators turned on. I don't want to go so dark as to do that. So I'm going to just bring it down to there. And now if you take a look at history, you'll see that it says it has those brush strokes, and then it says update exposure adjustment, and I updated it twice. I changed it once, and then I decided that was too far, so I backed off a little bit more. And you can see that that I have 2 of those entries in there. Now if I close the adjustment brush, you can now see a definite difference between the before and the after, because I actually made a change. If I now go back into the adjustment brush and take a look at this one again by clicking on that dot, you can see that it has a negative exposure of -1.41. So I'm going to now close it again, and I want to make a second adjustment. I don't want to adjust the same thing again. I actually want to adjust this area right here to go even darker. I don't want to go darker everywhere that I just adjusted. So I'm going to actually go into the adjustment brush again, and instead of clicking on that dot to make a change to the existing adjustment, I'm going to paint a whole new one. And this one is going to be just right around here. And I'm going to drag that also to negative to make it just a little bit darker. About like that. And now you'll notice in history that we have a new brush stroke and a new adjustment to that brush stroke. So now I can click either Done down here below the image, or click the adjustment brush again. I'm going to click Done this time to indicate that I finished with that. The same thing is true with the Radial Filter and the Graduated Filter. If I click on the Graduated Filter right now, everything is neutral. So if I make a Graduated Filter like that, and let's say I click New and make another Graduated Filter like that, and now I'm finished with them, so I'm going to click on the Graduated Filter. I've made 2 Graduated Filters, but I didn't do anything with them. So they actually aren't doing anything. They're 2 graduated filters that do nothing. So if I want to do something with them, I can go back and click on one of those silver buttons, and if I hold my mouse down on it, I guess I have to do this one now. If I hold my mouse down on it, I can see where it's adjusting. Now I can do the same thing on this one and see where that one's adjusting. And now I can make an adjustment on that if I want to. I can change the exposure on that, whatever I want to do with it. And I've actually changed my mind. I'm going to back up to before I made that, and back to before I made that one also. So now I've gone back in history to before I did those two. Actually, I want to do before I did any of those graduated filters. So I'm going to click on the Update Exposure Adjustment, and now when I do something else, it's going to delete all of those because it's going to take me right to this history state. So do the same thing with the Radial Filter. So I'm going to create a Radial Filter. Just drag around like this. And reposition it a little bit like that, and I can adjust the sides like that. And so now I have a radial filter, but it isn't doing anything yet. So I don't have to get out and get back in again. I can at this point adjust my whatever it is I want to do, and I'm going to again adjust the exposure a little bit to really create more drama right around the center of this image. And that's all I want to do with that. So I can now click back on that. So you can see that I've used the radial filter and I used it to make an exposure adjustment. If I want to make some other kind of adjustment, let's say, for example, I'll go back to that same radial filter. And let's say I want to make a saturation adjustment. I want to desaturate the outside a little bit. So I can do that. I'm not going to do it a whole lot. So now I've made a second adjustment on that same radial filter. So that radial filter has an exposure adjustment and a saturation adjustment, both on that radial filter. And you can see that in history. So many people tend to have their navigator panel open, and I need to make another adjustment here in order to illustrate this point. So what am I going to pick on? I'm going to pick on the gradients, as I haven't actually used that. Another approach you can take here is if you know what adjustment you want to make, you can change this before you use the tool. So let's say that I know that what I want to do here is to, what might I want to do? Pressure. I'm going to decrease the contrast in part of the image, the bottom of the image. So I'm going to drag up from the bottom, and you can see that I can tilt this. It's kind of finicky. You need to be really careful to get it straight, or you can hold the shift, the what is that? The shift key to force it to be straight like that. So notice that this time it did that because I had set that beforehand. It did that automatically. So, and you'll notice now that it is not reporting any particular adjustment there, which is a disadvantage because you can't see later what you did with that graduated filter. If you ask yourself, what did I do with that? Well, you can find out by going to the graduated filter and click that down, and you can see what you did with it. But you have to actually go into it to see, whereas it's much more convenient to be able to see it in history. I can also create, if I want to now create another one, I'm going to go out of that, and I'm going to I've decided I want to create a new graduated filter up here, which is going to be I'm going to lighten this area a little bit. So I'll go into the graduated filter, but notice that because I changed this before I set the tool in my image, that it remembers that, which is not necessarily what you want because you don't always want to use the same adjustment. So it's best, in my opinion, to keep this neutral until you actually engage it in the image, and then make your change. And that way, first of all, your history panel will reflect what you've done, and that way you won't accidentally make an adjustment that you didn't mean to make. So to reset all these to neutral, you can double-click on the word Effect, and that will set everything to neutral. Now I'm going to do my little drag up here and set it right like that. And I'm going to lighten that a little bit, just a little bit, like that. And that's all I want to do here. Okay, so now I've made a whole lot of adjustments here, and if we take a look at the history panel, I want to be able to see the entire history panel, but, well, I still can, just barely, so I would need to make more adjustments. But if you can't see the word history and the word import, then you're not seeing your entire history panel. So if that's the case, for example, if I had presets open, you're definitely not going to see all my history panel. So you want to close everything available up above here, close presets, and close the navigator so that you can see your entire history panel from the word history to the word import. And if you have lots and lots of history steps, you still won't see them all, in which case you want to see the most recent ones. So you want to see the word history and the top of the history panel, and ideally all the way down to the word import. Okay, so the main thing here is that to recognize that these tools are not doing anything until you have changed something with them. And it's best to start by activating the tool and then make the change so that it is recorded in your history panel. There you go. I hope that has been helpful for you.